The technology may be lagging behind. The people and the process are top tier. You can be successful with archaic technology.
You gotta have the right pieces in place before you build on top.
Imagine a world where all of our data is first unified. We're guaranteed to have a unified context moving forward.
Technology is very far advanced, but the thing we haven't advanced on is the unification of knowledge. And if that's not in place, you can't have anything really foundational to drive those ROIs that, you're dreaming of. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TARTLEcast. You are here with your host, Alexander McCaig, CEO of TARTLE, and our special guest, Colin Graves. Colin Graves is the CEO of northlabs.io, and they specialize in fractional cloud analytics. And I know it may sound like a little bit of a mouthful, but it's a lot of work to engage with enterprises and bring all of the knowledge base that they have, which is given all their systems, into one centralized area that can actually be used and deliver insights from it. Is that true, Colin?
Yes, it is very true. Spot
Cool.
on.
Yeah. So did I intro that appropriately? Just want to make sure that I'm just saying this is what you guys do.
Absolutely. Yeah. We represent our customers by primarily acting as a bolt-on data and analytics team, and that covers everything from insights through to predictive forecasting, machine learning, and AI, which is obviously the new hotness today, but we've been in that seat now since I started this company in 2016. And really our unique moat, which I'm sure we'll discuss, is building industry-specific analytics products for our customers. So we're trying to avoid the need to rebuild the same thing over and over again, bring those efficiencies to our customer, get them insights faster, and ultimately, improve the operational excellence within their business in a much more timely fashion compared to sort of the traditional way of doing things.
No, that's a tough nut to crack. Why? Because everybody's got different types of data, different types of system they have to pipe into. And in your case, you don't want to have to keep reinventing the wheel because it makes it difficult to scale. So how have you guys sort of crossed that bridge, right? Or, gone over that hurdle when it comes to building these analytics dashboards, building these data warehouses that, frankly, machine learning could probably give them more insights than artificial intelligence could do right now at a fraction of the cost. Like, how are you attacking that for your clients?
It's a great question. Really, the bread and butter for us, where our sort of IP lives, is in the data modeling area of building these systems, right? When we talk about data warehouses and data ingestion and all that stuff, we're increasingly in a commoditized space for those types of technologies. And what I always say is there are really good data programs out there that are running off of an old relational database, but the people and the process are top tier. The technology may be lagging behind, but that's ultimately the least important part of the value conversation for customers. If you have your other ducks in a row, you can be successful with archaic technologies. On the flip side, the statistics show us that anywhere between 80 and 90% of enterprises fail to actually get an enterprise data program off the ground, even with best of breed, cutting edge technologies that all have the shiniest features and, most advanced capabilities.
Why is that?
Because the people in the process never get factored into the equation. We're treating the eventual success of our data program as a technology selection problem, when that is really the least valuable part of that equation. And so for us, being able to come to a customer and say, look, we don't really care what your existing data foundation looks like, whether something exists or not. We're going to bring all of the tools to the table that we've found work the best together. We're going to administer those tools for you. We're going to be sort of the curators of your data. But really what I was talking about, the kicker, is our data models are purpose-built for the industries they live in. And we use a more advanced data modeling technique. It's called Data Vault for anyone who's interested. And what Data Vault allows you to do is set up the relationship between different types of data without the model actually caring what the specific source is. So for a manufacturing customer, for example, whether they're using SAP for their ERP or NetSuite or Epicor, it doesn't matter because the ERP is still producing records that say this is a customer, this is an order, this is an order line item, this is a bill of materials, et cetera, et cetera. So our models are smart enough to navigate those relationships with sometimes a little bit of massaging. But the point is, we can plug in our modules into a customer and be 90% of the way to value recognition on the first day.
So then that 10% that's left, how much massaging, how much time does it typically take for your customers? Because that's usually like the secret sauce in the business that you have to work through. And that's going to require a lot of one-on-one conversation with the teams that are running the systems generating that data, correct?
Correct. Our hardened guarantee with our customers is that within the first 45 days of working with us, you have insights being generated within your system. And when you compare that to the traditional approach that North Labs took for years, which was even if I built 1,000 data programs for 1,000 different manufacturing customers, for example, I still need to charge you and follow a timeline as though I've never done it before.
Yeah.
And the more efficient we get, that just means that we make more money at the end of the day. But you're still talking about a 9 to 12 month investment thesis and hoping for ROI thereafter. So for us, when we're compared to, call it the customer's next best alternative, which is either hiring a different technology services firm, staffing out a team of W2, finding a few freelancers, whatever the case may be, our value recognition timeline is much quicker than any of those alternatives. And sort of the interesting thing is, because we focus on industry solutions for the most part, we have some functional solutions like RevOps or HR analytics, marketing analytics, that sort of thing. But the nice thing is, because of how we build those data models, whenever we land another manufacturing customer, we can pick up all of those models, drop them into the customer's environment and turn them on.
There's the scale.
Do that little bit of massaging. But now we're usually in a window where, 45 days is our guarantee. Our team is averaging 22 days right now to actually being able to present to executive stakeholders what their new capabilities look like.
That's amazing. So now I'm sure this comes up in client conversations for you, and it's more like a strategic thing. They'll be like, well, why don't we just use, like an LLM to do our analytics? How do you answer that for the group? Especially if someone says something brash and doesn't have a clue about data security or like sharing private data. But how do you typically meet them when that comes up? Because I know it does.
It does, for sure. And the biggest thing that we talk about is akin to building a house, right? You can have the greatest efficiencies known to man, but if you don't first pour the foundation of the house with high quality concrete and high quality rebar, whatever you're going to use for efficiencies when you're drywalling or framing or putting on paint doesn't matter, because I can use all of those efficiencies I want. But if I'm standing up a house on the sod in my backyard, I'm never actually going to be able to live in the house because it's going to fall over the first time the wind blows.
Right.
And that's really where we're at these days with generative AI, LLMs, is context specificity, right? If an LLM can't see across your entire business, the danger is that it's building rules of law or laws of physics
too small.
on a narrow context window within the business. And it's not actually going to give you the insights you're looking for. It's only going to give you insights relative to the context it holds, which could become a runaway train in, a matter of a couple of weeks, frankly.
So when you talk about this, like structurally, and you talk, foundationally, you got to have the right pieces in place before you build on top. Are you almost like building, and you did mention machine learning, artificial intelligence that you guys work with, like vector files specific to essentially the knowledge stores. So when a new thing gets stood up or new things are coming in, there's at least a basis of context for that to leap off of for that business itself. I know you've done work with IMAX and others, but you see what I'm getting at?
That's correct. Yeah. So the base analytics capabilities, it's really about just getting the fundamentals right. Do we have proper ingestion of our systems? Are the data from within those systems mapped correctly so they all speak the same language, right? Because having one system that says customer name, Colin Graves, versus customer first name, customer last name, it sounds very similar to our brain, but to a machine, that couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
And so those foundational pieces, those fundamentals are critically important. From there, yes, you can start setting vectors, you can have pre-built retrieval augmentation, whatever that might look like. But we're typically implementing that as sort of a phase 2 after 3 or 6 months
That's what I want
of
to know.
testing the foundation to make sure it's solid. Because no matter how many efficiencies we say we bring to the table, at the end of the day, our mission at North Labs is to deliver massive ROI relative to our costs. Everything we do for our customers is tied to an ROI thesis. Everything. So we don't want to be willy-nilly and skip ahead chapters just because it's cool and exciting and sexy when we know we can't bring it back to the ROI thesis.
Do you, outside of this essentially foundational hardening that you're doing in businesses, do you ever find that a business today they're very apt to adopt a lot of new stuff, but don't have the right pieces in place and are actually weakening their systems or bringing in all these tools? Do you ever have to say, hold on, we got to do a reset?
Absolutely. I mean, the advent of AI is the biggest villain in all of this, because every end user tool being used within the organization is rolling out generative AI capabilities to appease investors. And so really the underlying word of caution that I give to those people is, look, it might help from an efficiency standpoint in the short term, but you have to remember the context application that's going on within each of those tools. So if I stand up 8 different tools within Salesforce and HubSpot and NetSuite and QuickBooks and you name it, all of those AI capabilities are living with different viewpoints of the world, a different understanding of the business. And it's only a matter of time before those differences come to a head. So instead, imagine a world where all of our data is first unified, and then we're applying large language models or generative AI capabilities on top of that. So we're guaranteed to have a unified context moving forward. Doesn't mean that the system will always be correct, but it means it has the best probability of being correct and the best probability of improving with time. That's your enterprise grade transformation. Turning on Copilot in a world where Copilot can only see 20% of your organization's documents, data, what have you, is fun and exciting, but has hard limitations that aren't going to be overcome without that fundamental work being put in place first.
Here's what's cool about your observation, strategically and also about the future. We've had to create all these tools, not we, but other people, because systems haven't been unified. There's no common theme, communication, central repository, frankly, of so much human knowledge or machine knowledge in one spot. And what you're doing is you're trying to right a ship that's moving at 1,000 miles an hour, but it's completely upside down. And when people are kind of jumping off with their life-saving vessels, you're like, why don't you come over here? Let me show you how you actually should sail a ship, right? We got to bring all these things in here. We need someone running the ropes, pulling this, down in the galley, cooking, right? And there's all these different pieces that have to come together to get it to work. So then you have the context of actually manning a vessel, rather than just saying the machine is going to drive this thing forward, but it has zero context how to actually move the ship itself. It requires so much unification of a team or people or knowledge base in that instance. And so what I like about your strategy is that when you're going to your clients, you're educating them on, technology is very far advanced, but the thing we haven't advanced on is the unification of knowledge. And if that's not in place, you can't have anything really foundational to drive those ROIs that, you're dreaming of. And so I can show you to do that, but we have to take fundamental steps to go back. And not only does this happen on business systems, Colin, as you know, this happens in public systems. This happens with people in their private data. Everything's scattered all over the place. And there really haven't been good mechanisms historically. And we're trying to get the best insights we can, but really it's 20% efficiency when we can get up to 90. And like you say, in 22 days, if we just have a unified approach to where that data is going to live and how we talk about the relation of it, right?
Right, exactly. And look, that doesn't mean that you're a year away from using the data with our approach, right? There is a definite tendency of more traditional technology services firms, we used to be one, to say we're gonna make sure that all of the underlying, what's under the hood is perfect before we start extending those capabilities to end users. And I actually feel like the opposite approach is more advantageous, not only for the customer, but for the technology services firm. Why? Because the average customer today, when they're adopting a data center of excellence or building a data program, is operating almost exclusively off of unknown unknowns. I might know I want a data program, and I might understand when with all the dominoes lined up, I might understand where the last domino falls, where I want it to fall. I don't understand how to make the first domino fall.
Mm.
And I don't necessarily understand the way in which the dominoes will fall en route to that last domino. And that's what we're here to help our customers solve. Now, the nice thing is, the faster you can get something tangible into the hands of stakeholders, you're piercing that veil of ignorance that exists in business transformation.
For sure.
Because the initial understanding, right? And oftentimes in these committees, you have a senior leader who's been in the industry for 4 decades and is really set on this is how the world works. And you might have some younger hotshots who say, look, this is the way the world works now, but 5 years from now, the world is going to look very different, whether you like it or not. So you're operating with all of these differences in philosophies in mind. So the sooner you can actually turn something over to that team and say, tell me what you don't like. Tell me where it's not correct. And they say, well, I want to see this visualization this way because I want to use the system like this.
Dude, they're bought in. They're bought in at that point.
Right. Or, right, more for us, selfishly, maybe a CFO says, hey, this all looks great, except these 2 pieces of data are incorrect, according to my Excel spreadsheet I've kept locally on my computer for the last 2.5 years, 3 years.
Did you ask him, did you think, is your Excel spreadsheet correct?
Right. So, but that selfishly is the best possible indication of where my team needs to be looking internally to get things where they need to be. We're now no longer saying, geez, we think there might be data quality issues everywhere, because spoiler, there's data quality issues everywhere within every company. Now we have a very pointed area to address, to say, okay, whatever needs to be done data quality wise to fix those 2 line items that the CFO called out. Now we no longer have this massive equation that's unsolvable. Now we have a very small problem that needs to be fixed. And you can typically turn that around in a couple of days, a week, couple of weeks, right? And then you go back to that CFO and say, all right, Alexander, now tell me how this looks. And once that CFO goes, yeah, it looks the same as this local Excel spreadsheet that is probably incorrect, but I trust it. Now I see it over here. Now I'm bought in. Now I'm thinking about what else we can do. Meanwhile, we're behind the scenes putting together governance models, security models, scalability models, all that sort of stuff. But you're working with the real world business problem out of the gates, as opposed to delaying that conversation 6, 9, 12 months, right? So you're getting a much faster turn of the wheel for these stakeholders, which ultimately gets them excited. That's why I wanted to focus on data in the first place. My last company did not do that to the same extent. I love data as it relates to operational excellence within a business because it's the closest thing to something you can see, touch, and smell in the world of IT than anything else. So the value equation becomes how quickly internally from a KPI perspective can I be putting something tangible into the hands of my buyer, even if it's for feedback and it's in an experimental setting. Because again, going back to next best alternatives and justifying investment, that CFO is going to look at this and go, Jesus, last group told us that I wouldn't have this for a year.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't have even hired that freelancer off of Upwork yet. And I already have something, even it might not be perfect, but I at least have something to demonstrate that our journey has really started. That's really powerful.
No, it's amazing. So then what's next for North Labs? You have your model, you know how to scale, you know how to engage with the consumer, with your customer. Is it about accelerating that last 10%? Like what's next for you guys?
Next for us is expanding into new industry verticals. 2/3 of our customer base today is mid-market, manufacturing, and industrial. That's where we have the most turns of the lathe with our customers. So this idea that we can bring in one intelligence solution that shows them how a dollar actually flows through the business, all the way from supply chain planning through to predictive maintenance, scrap, asset tracking, on time in full, all of it, right? And we've replicated the same capabilities within higher education. And at surface level, those sound like two extremely different verticals. The value chain is actually almost identical.
Cogs in a wheel,
like
man.
a bow tie.
Yeah,
You have
cogs in
lots
a
of
wheel.
inputs, you have a production line, and then you have lots of outputs. And so for us right now, for this year and next year, is how do we get to, 50 higher ed customers with this new intelligence solution we've just launched that can track everything from enrollment and admissions through to retention, which every higher ed institution struggles with, through to athletics and alumni donation and federal compliance reporting for a fixed cost every year. And I'm really excited about that. But we've got our eyes set on biopharma. We have a target biopharma customer right now who we're building this capability with, insurance, law firms, commercial real estate. There are a lot of different areas we can go. But to answer your question most succinctly, my goal is by 2030 to have scaled to 25 million in top line recurring revenue and, eventually passing the baton to an acquirer.
Love that. And so you're sharp, you are very forward looking, and you're a fundamentalist when it comes to technological evolution, which I appreciate. Where do you see things headed in a macro sense, frankly, just given all the hype around artificial intelligence, but knowing the reality of these things and what you see with businesses? How does this world evolve? Where do you think we're headed?
It's a great question. We're definitely heading toward an era where developer productivity becomes a primary KPI measurement. And I do see, you see these SaaS companies who are saying, well, we're not going to hire another person. We're just going to hire AI through, 2026. And what they're saying in that for your listeners is we have an established group of engineers, but we think we can eke out more productivity per head by leveraging AI. And I tend to think that's true. I think the companies that are going to fall down are those who don't have an established cadre of engineers who understand the domain specifics of their company, who instead try and use AI as a general purpose tool to build their technology. I'm still not sold on that yet. I don't think generative AI is quite there. You still need that strong human element, that human in the loop sort of feedback cycle. But I do think we're going to see an explosion of developer productivity over the next 3 to 5 years. I also think we're going to get to a capability at some point where maybe the unification of data and the modeling of data not goes away, but can be supplemented by intelligent generative AI systems that can, infer. The example I used earlier, one system says customer name, another system says customer first name, customer last name. Are we going to get to a position where AI can help make that inference without us needing to explicitly write those rules within our data modeling? I think there's a chance for that. I think it's further out than we think.
It definitely is.
But I do think we'll converge on that at some point. Hopefully I'm not in the industry anymore, or I've moved on to my next thing within the industry, whatever that looks like.
Because inference requires implicit understanding.
Correct.
And that typically comes from longitudinally studied behaviors, thoughts, emotions of human beings that deal with many different inputs all at once that can say, this is how you infer from this, especially when novel things come in. But artificial intelligence can't do that because they haven't historically accessed implicit data sets because they don't, one, have a good method to do it, and two, they don't want to pay for it. So I think it's going to be further out than we think, but it's going to be a whole world wrestling around that 20% efficiency you talked about from their bolt-on solutions. But really, it'll create efficiency, but not understanding.
That's a great way to put it. And let's not forget, at the end of the day, these are people making requests of artificial intelligence systems. And if I've learned anything over 17, almost 18 years of doing this with running 2 companies, it's that typically what stakeholders ask for is very different than what they actually want
Mm-hmm.
because of those unknown unknowns, right? So that domain, that longitudinal understanding that you referred to, if that's not present within the human element of our business, it can't possibly exist within the AI element of our business.
Correct.
So if we, we'll likely, whenever that capability does come, we're going to realize that it's not purely scientific. There is art to this.
Mm-hmm.
What does Alexander actually mean when he says, I want my electrical company to, know how many active meters I have on a monthly basis? Well, active meter, I'm using this as a real world example, by the way. You ask 5 different C-suite executives within the business what an active meter is, and you get 5 different definitions. And so the first order of importance is, how do we converge on one definition of what actually an active meter is and agree on that? Because only then, to your point, can you have hardened longitudinal understanding,
Yeah.
right? Because if I have to change my definition of that key variable, it means that all of my downstream measurements are also different from those other 4 individuals who were asked. So we have to define that before we can unify anywhere else. And that is a practice of patience and iterations.
Philosophical, man.
And sometimes just
it's way
splitting
more
the difference.
philosophical. Yeah, too good, too good. So, Colin, I appreciate all these insights and you speaking about your business. For those who are listening to this, where can they come to find out more about you and the business itself? Where would they go?
Sure. North Labs is online at northlabs.io or northlabs.com, dealer's choice. I don't have any social media other than LinkedIn. You can find me there at /in/Colin with 2 L's, Graves like dead people. I love to connect. Again, I've been doing this almost 2 decades. I'm more than 1,000 projects in, and I'm always happy to be a sounding board for people looking to build their data capabilities.
Very cool. And why'd you call it North Labs?
North Labs for me pays homage to my upbringing in Minnesota. I have a soft spot. I don't live there anymore, but I have a soft spot. I grew up a huge North Stars hockey fan.
Nice.
So North homage there also shows upward growth. And then Labs denotes this idea of R&D and innovation within an organization that we provide. Really, we're paid R&D executioners. We are paid to make innovation actually happen within organizations who may otherwise not have been able to unlock it themselves. So yeah, it's quite a bit different than our competitors who all use the word data.
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
business.
Oh,
But for us, it's data is a byproduct of proper innovation execution, and that comes in an R&D sort of lab setting.
Love that, man. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Colin Graves, CEO of northlabs.io. You heard it here first, and it's just as artful as it is technological. Colin, thank you very much for coming on.
I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.